business of owning and operating a race team has often been as unpredictable and dangerous as actually driving the cars. Even the most successful teams have at times been on the brink of collapse. Countless others have disappeared altogether, leaving the rest of us to wonder what went wrong. In S1apSh0es series Liars, Thieves, and Lawyers, we've seen many of the most infamous examples from NASCAR's past and present. But in terms of magnitude, one team's implosion stands out from all the rest.
In the early 2000s, MB2 Motorsports was a consistent, if unspectacular, mid-pack team. They had hired drivers featured on this channel before, including Jerry Nadeau and Johnny Benson Jr. In 2006, MB2 had a new shop but old drivers, and began to doubt if they'd ever compete for a championship. But then came a real estate mogul from South Carolina, a man with grand ideas of elevating the team into one of the series' biggest super teams. MB2 thought they were getting a fresh start, a new lease on life, but instead, it was the beginning of the end.
Joe, getting a big hug from car owner Jay Fry. And Joe, tell us about that, the Kansas sweep for your team this year. Hey, John Hunter.
Oh my gosh, incredible day. Oh, what a day for the Army, Chevrolet, Valvoline, Centrex, Hendrick Motorsports, building our engines. Awesome, Rick, killer motor, man. Thank you very much.
In May 1996, Rick Hendrick picked up new sponsorship from the M&M Mars Company, who wanted him to start a fourth Winston Cup team. Hendrick wasn't ready to do so, but had some friends who wanted to break into racing, so he directed employee Jay Fry to meet with Reed Morton, Nelson Bowers II, and Tom Beard. To give their team a name, Morton, Bowers, and Beard used the first letter of each of their names, MBB or MB2 Motorsports. MB2 would operate as Hendrick's sister team, using Hendrick engines. They stayed with General Motors, but ran Pontiacs instead of Hendrick's Chevrolets. MB2 signed Derek Cope and went racing in 1997. For nearly 6 full seasons, MB2 developed into a steady mid-pack team, which tended to hire veteran drivers over newcomers. After Cope came Ernie Irvan and Kenny Schrader. Jerry Nadeau joined as a relief driver after Irvan retired in '99 and rejoined the team full-time in 2003. By then, MB2 was a 2-car operation after their 2000 merger with Tyler Jet Motorsports. Nadeau's teammate Johnny Benson Jr. gave MB2 Motorsports its first win at Rockingham, but by the end of 2003, both Benson and Nadeau were off the team. Gone along with them was Pontiac, which scaled back their NASCAR program at the end of the year. In 2004, MB2 stayed with General Motors and Hendrick, fielding Chevrolets for veteran Joe Nemechek and rookie Scott Riggs. Nemechek scored the team their second win in a thrilling last-lap battle with Ricky Rudd.
Coming out of turn 4, white flag this time.
Yeah, this is good stuff right here. Man, it is.
1.5 miles to go.
Now watch Joe. Joe should be able to drive it way in deep here. If the car doesn't slide up the racetrack too much, he'll be able to hold it and then run side by side down the backstretch.
Joe Nemechek's story is well known. Lost his brother John in a Craftsman truck racing accident at Homestead when Joe was competing in Las Vegas. His family encouraged him to continue racing.
Oh, here comes Rudd. He's got to run, but Nemechek will mirror block him now.
Rudd is a veteran to the apron, but it's Nemechek with the win at Kansas.
Riggs struggled through his rookie season, but rebounded in Speed Weeks 2005.
Jeff Gordon's going to win his third Daytona 500. Kurt Busch, Dale Jr., and Scott Riggs completes a dream week with a fourth-place finish.
On August 22, 2005, Riggs earned the best Cup Series finish of his career. Thanks to the strategy of his new crew chief, Riggs finished runner-up to Jeremy Mayfield in a fuel mileage race at Michigan. His crew chief, Rodney Childers. Yes, that Rodney Childers. Despite their measured improvements, things were changing fast behind the scenes. Bowers bought out Morton and Beard, and he held an 80% interest in MB2 Motorsports, with Jay Fry holding the remaining 20%. Then on June 29th came word that Valvoline was leaving MB2. The destination was Evernham Motorsports, the same team Riggs had lost to at Michigan. When that news broke on July 1st, MB2 still wanted to keep both Riggs and Childers, but needed a new sponsor. While the U.S. Army had re-upped with the number 01 team on July 8th, the future of the number 10 team was still very much up in the air. Time ran out on August 27th, just 5 days after Michigan, where Riggs and Childers confirmed they would follow Valvoline to Evernham. While the pair would even take the number 10 with them, they would not get to keep Riggs' rank and owner points. This proved critical under the top 35 rule, which locked the top 35 in owner points into each race. Thus, while Riggs would ultimately fall short of racing his way into the 2006 Daytona 500, both of MB2's cars had guaranteed starting spots. Once again, MB2 signed a veteran and one of the best to ever run at Daytona, two-time 500 winner Sterling Marlin. The 2005 season was his 8th and last for Felix Sabates and Chip Ganassi. On October 26th, he signed a 2-year contract with MB2 as driver of their second team. He'd run the number 14, honoring Marlin's late father Cuckoo Marlin, who passed away that August. His crew chief would be Doug Randolph, who worked with Scott Riggs before Rodney Childers took over. And on November 19th came the elusive sponsorship deal from Waste Management. But unlike Nemechek's full season backing from the Army, Waste Management would only be the primary sponsor for 12 of the 36 races, which was scaling back to an associate for the other 24. The hunt for sponsorship would have to continue into the next year. On February 6, 2006 came word that MB2 would field a third car, bringing back the part-time number 36 that road racer Boris Said had run. This time they would hire still another living legend in Bill Elliott. The car had previously been sponsored by Centrix Auto Finance, but that sponsor would now help keep Marlin's number 14 as a full-time entry. In its place was a company that was sponsoring a NASCAR team for the very first time, a brand that in just 17 months would go from a saving grace to a harbinger of doom, Ginn Clubs and Resorts.
Legally known as Edward R. Ginn, the real estate mogul preferred to go by the nickname Bobby. By 2006, the 57-year-old from South Carolina had been building his empire for decades, but his journey had been anything but smooth. He started working for his father in 1969, building government-funded homes for farmers in Georgia and the Carolinas. He graduated from military school, then majored in business at the University of South Carolina. But when his father became ill, Ginn left school to help with the business. The company had grown rapidly, and by 1975, Ginn had branched out into building condominiums and golf courses. But with this growth came some serious errors in judgment. As Ginn expanded into Florida during the late 70s, he did business with the infamous Butcher brothers, two bankers from Tennessee. When the Butchers were convicted of fraud and sentenced to 20 years in prison, Ginn pleaded ignorance. In 1985, after Congress deregulated the savings and loan industry, Ginn tried to buy out two rival developers in his native South Carolina. The resulting company, Hilton Head Holdings, was so deep in debt that it folded within a year. Soon, all over the low country of South Carolina, cars carried bumper stickers that read, "Honk if Bobby owes you money." In 1988, Ginn declared bankruptcy and moved to Charleston. But Ginn didn't disappear altogether. When he came out of bankruptcy in 1994, he vowed he had learned from his past mistakes and was more careful than ever in selecting his business partners. He found a new partner in the Lubert Alder firm from Philadelphia and established a new base of operations in Celebration, Florida, south of Orlando. There, Ginn incorporated his new business in 1998, the Ginn Company, and set to work on his latest vision, resorts designed for aging baby boomers. Among his brain trusts were golfing legends Tom Watson, Arnold Palmer, and Jack Nicklaus, who helped him design 3 new golf courses. Bobby Ginn is one of the few developers who truly understands the game of golf, Nicklaus said through his spokesperson. He understands the importance and the value of what the golf facility brings to the overall development. According to his website, Ginn reported more than $1 billion in real estate sales for the year of 2004, and he had nearly 30,000 acres of property either in planning or under development. All of this was to boost one of his subsidiaries, Ginn Sports Entertainment, which sought to extend the Ginn brand into professional sports. Building on Ginn's passion for golf, the group had already signed endorsement deals with golf star Annika Sorenstam, and also spread into tennis with professional player Harry Gilbert. But pretty soon, Ginn set his sights on a different sport entirely. For reasons not clearly known, that led him to MB2 Motorsports, and the deal to sponsor Bill Elliott and the Great American Race.
Ginn would immediately earn exposure at Daytona. Not only did Bill Elliott qualify for the Daytona 500, but he locked himself in with his qualifying speed. He also finished 17th in his Gatorade Duel, much to the chagrin of Derek Cope and Mike Skinner, who believed they were locked in a photo finish for the final transfer spot. Elliott rolled off 33rd, led on lap 126, and finished in 19th. For Joe Nemechek and Sterling Marlin, it was a race to forget. In their qualifiers, Nemechek blew an engine and Marlin wrecked. Both wrecked again in the 500 and finished 33rd and 34th. Nevertheless, Ginn stepped up his sponsorship with MB2. Since Elliott's run was a one-off, he turned his attention to Marlin's number 14, putting Ginn logos on his car at Martinsville, Daytona, and Charlotte. Ginn would also add a 4th race, the May 11th round at Darlington. The Daytona car would be designed by 3 teenage campers from Camp Boggy Creek, a sister camp of Victory Junction for seriously ill children. Easter Seal sponsored the deck lid of this car, a charity selected after a go-kart race between Marlin and Bill Elliott. Ginn also agreed to sponsor MB2's development driver Craig Kinzer in the Craftsman Truck Series, starting at Martinsville, and their Drive for Diversity candidate Jesus Hernandez. Both had already yielded results. On July 15th, Hernandez became the first Hispanic driver to win at Hickory, while Kinzer had won the ARCA race at Talladega from the pole. Then on July 8th came even bigger news. Bobby Ginn was investing in MB2 Motorsports, and as always, the developer went big. On July 26th, Ginn confirmed that he had purchased Nelson Bauer's entire 80% interest in the team, leaving only the 20% already owned by Chief Operating Officer Jay Fry. This immediately solved 2 problems the team was facing. As part of the acquisition, Ginn would fully sponsor Sterling Marlin for another 10 races in 2006. Ginn also declared a rumored merger with DEI was off the table. Jay Fry said, "It seems MB2 has the potential for eventually keeping pace with title-caliber powerhouses such as Hendrick Motorsports and Roush Racing." He added that Ginn's investment would also make it easier for the team to land additional sponsors. Ginn wasn't the first person to invest so heavily in a NASCAR team. Often the best way for an outsider to break into NASCAR was to purchase a team that was on the verge of closing. In 1999, Jim Matei and John Porter purchased the remaining assets of Jeffrey Bodine's struggling owner-driver team to form Matei Motorsports. The next year, Jack Birmingham bought Bahari Racing to form Eel River Racing. But in most of those cases, aspiring owners bought single-car teams. Ginn took on a 2-car team and looked to expand it even further. He wanted to run 4 teams in 2007, adding 2 drivers to join Marlin and Nemechek. He did so believing NASCAR's new Car of Tomorrow would level the playing field. Bobby Ginn's first race as a NASCAR Cup Series team owner was the Brickyard 400 at Indianapolis. His cars ran 24th and 31st. It wasn't the best outcome, but Ginn was already shopping for drivers.
1 year after his Salute to You tour, Mark Martin was still running full-time in the Cup Series for Roush Racing. He again made noise about scaling back to a part-time effort in 2007, but in May he clarified that he wanted that schedule to include the All-Star race. For much of the season, the press hounded Mark Martin on 2 questions: who would he drive for, and who would take over his old ride at Roush? On June 5th, Mark denied rumors that he would be driving for Robert Yates Racing, including one rumor that he'd even buy the team. Benny Ertl, Mark Martin's business manager, denied this. On August the 13th, Mark Martin firmly denied that he would be returning as an owner-driver, which had been a disaster for him in his first season in the sport. August 26th saw new rumors of a ride with No Fear Racing, the Frankie Stoddard-owned team which ran Roush equipment with Boris Said driving. Even Michael Waltrip Racing was in the conversation, although they said they couldn't accommodate Mark Martin's part-time schedule. Well, yet. As to Mark Martin's replacement, the driver had been Todd Cleaver. Cleaver had been rumored to take over for Mark as early as June 24th, though on May 16th he was in the hot seat, and there were rumors that he'd be let go by Roush Racing due to poor performance. On the 4th of July came news that Cleaver would make his Cup debut in a 5th car for Roush Racing, the 06 at Chicagoland. Cleaver finished 28th, his first of 7 planned races before going full-time in 2007. On August 19th, Mark seemed certain Cleaver was the guy. "The 6 car is set right now," he said. "Todd's going to drive the car. The whole plan for 2006 has been to work as hard as we could to get Todd ready to take over the 6 car. We're still doing that." Martin would be even more firm on September the 1st, when he insisted wherever he went, he wasn't going to drive Roush's number 6 in 2007. "I've never once this year thought or considered driving it again in 2007, he said. "I've driven it 19 years. That's enough for the 6 car to me." Cleaver, however, wasn't so sure. "The rumors are just that. They're speculation," he said. "In all honesty, I've talked to Mark about this. I'm worried about this weekend. I'm not really worried about next year. I'm very realistic. I live for the weekend. Rumors are rumors, and if I go out and win the Busch race this weekend, they all seem to disappear. The plans are still that I will be driving the 6 car next year." On October 5th, with the future of the 6 car now a toss-up between Cleaver and David Reagan, NASCAR.com broke the most surprising news of all. Mark Martin would drive for Bobby Ginn.
While his team wasn't performing all that strong on the track, Bobby Ginn was hard at work preparing for 2007. On September 20th, Jay Fry confirmed the team was interested in hiring a Busch Series driver who was outperforming for Team Renzi, Regan Smith. Gary Dehart became director of shop operations. The team would also hire motocross star Ricky Carmichael to a driver development deal, joining a now crowded trio with Craig Kinzer and Jesus Hernandez. In December, Ginn would bring his group to a test in Lakeland, Florida. On October 6th, one day after NASCAR.com broke the news, Ginn confirmed he had landed Mark Martin for his first part-time season in 2007. He would drive the U.S. Army Chevrolet, bumping Joe Nemechek to a new third Cup team, the number 13. Sterling Marlin would remain in the number 14, resulting in perhaps the oldest multi-car team in NASCAR history. Nemechek was 43, Martin was 47, and Marlin was 49. By joining the team, Martin's own driver development program would join Ginn's, adding to the roster Matt Bowers and Mark's son Matt Martin, both 15 years old. Ginn denied rumors that the team would switch from Chevrolet to Ford, and also denied that Martin would gain a part ownership of the team. Martin's schedule would cover 20 races in 2007, including the Budweiser Shootout and the All-Star Race. He would later agree to continue to run part-time for the team in 2008. Martin would then serve as driver coach in the remaining races, where Regan Smith would pilot the number 01. Ford was less than thrilled that one of their biggest names had joined the Bowtie Brigade. Among them were Dan Davis, Ford's director of racing technology. Owners such as Bobby Ginn are willing to pay an enormous salary for a part-time driver, he said. On November 18th, Jack Roush had bought back Martin's share of the number 17 team, for which Matt Kenseth drove. While MB2's previous arrangement with the U.S. Army would continue through 2007, Ginn remained vague on how well-funded both his number 13 and number 14 teams would be. "If we don't have a full sponsor, it'll be the company," he said of Nemechek's number 13. Of Marlin's team, he only said, "I think Waste Management is back, and we've got a couple of others that are close." On November 10th, when Ginn confirmed their crew chief lineups, he said only that team sponsors for the number 13 and number 14 will be announced at a later date. Even more troubling, both Marlin and Nemechek were now on the wrong side of the top 35 line. Marlin finished the year 74 points out of the top 35, while Nemechek's new team didn't have any owner points to rely on. Poor runs like they had in the 2006 duels would mean an early trip home. On November 21st, 2006, MB2 Motorsports was no more. The three-car team was renamed Ginn Racing. Curiously, the domain name GinnRacing.com had been active since at least October 22nd.
During the offseason, it was anybody's guess as to how Ginn Racing would perform in 2007, but other mid-pack teams seemed to like the team's idea of bringing in outside investors. On January 26, just after losing their flagship driver, Jack Roush said he was close to finalizing a deal with the Red Sox owner, John Henry, ultimately rebranding his team as Roush Fenway Racing. Evernham Motorsports were also seeking funding, and would find it from another sports executive in George Gillette. The result would become Gillette Evernham Motorsports. Back at Ginn's 144,000 square foot shop, a building 3 times the size of MB2's original shop, preparations were ongoing for a 4-car lineup at Daytona. Waste Management was still on Marlin's car for just 12 races, but on January 22nd came word that Panasonic had signed on for the remaining 24. Joe Nemechek finally attracted sponsorship of his own, as Certainteed would back the number 13, but only for half of the 36-race schedule. The 4th car, the number 39, was for Regan Smith to attempt his series debut. Ginn himself would sponsor Smith's ride, a preview for his upcoming starts in the 01. Ginn also spared no expense in promoting his 4-car lineup for Daytona. After Florida was hit by a series of tornadoes, he auctioned off a travel package to the Daytona 500. The winner was Ocala, Florida resident Myron Bowling, who would be on hand for the Great American Race. Ginn matched his winning bid of $13,600 and donated it to the American Red Cross. A massive 61-car entry list contested the 43 starting spots. Sterling Marlin put up a monster lap in qualifying, running 8th fastest overall. Most critically, he was second to David Reagan among the drivers not locked in, meaning he was locked into the 500 based on speed, and wouldn't have to worry about the qualifying race later. By pure chance, all 4 of Ginn's cars would race each other in the second Gatorade duel. This meant that both Mark Martin and Sterling Marlin had a chance to help Joe Nemechek and Regan Smith take the final 2 transfer spots. With 3 laps to go, Marlin was running in 4th place, while Joe Nemechek was in 11th, racing Paul Menard for the last transfer spot. Further back, Mark Martin was trying to lead the way for Regan Smith, when Smith made contact with Jamie McMurray. As Smith fell out of contention, Marlin was then told to back off to help Nemechek. Nemechek finished 9th, with Marlin 12th, and Mark Martin 14th. Regan Smith hung on to take 19th, but would have to wait another year to make his first start in the Daytona 500. On February 18th, the day of the big race itself, Joe Nemechek started 18th, with Sterling Marlin in 38th. But it was Mark Martin who started 26th that made the race an instant classic. Martin took the lead with 24 laps to go and stayed there through 2 multi-car pileups that forced the 500 into overtime.
White flag, 1 lap to go.
To the white, man. Coming to the white. Single file behind him.
Front 4, single file. Here they go. They got to go. They got to get Mark moved. They got to move him somehow.
Gets back to that yellow line right around the bottom, all the way through turn 1 and 2.
Mark Martin is driving the race of his life, and there's nobody that's better at holding people off at Daytona.
And Kyle Busch lagged back a little bit. Is he going to get help? Is he going to come? He's looking.
Back behind you.
He almost squeezed Harvick into the wall, and here comes Harvick, the 29, with Matt Kenseth.
Oh, Mark got loose. Mark got loose.
And Harvick's getting a run off turn 4. It's going to be a drag race all the way back to the start-finish line. No caution. They're side by side, right to the line.
Big crash. Here they come. Checkered flag. Harvick. Kevin Harvick wins the Daytona 500.
We got one car on his roof coming across the start-finish line.
Still wrecking. They're wrecking everywhere.
It was a crushing disappointment not only for Martin but the rest of Ginn Racing. When the final wreck began, Sterling Marlin and Joe Nemechek went from battling for 14th to a race for 9th. That changed when Casey Mears spun across the track. Nemechek escaped to finish 9th, but Marlin, trapped between Mears and a flipping Clint Boyer, had to settle for 19th.
The next week in Fontana on February 25th, Mark Martin finished 5th. Since Daytona winner Kevin Harvick ran 17th, this gave Martin the points lead by 5 over his former teammate Jeff Burton. It also marked the first time the former MB2 Motorsports team ever took the point lead since they were founded in 1996. Martin then kept the momentum going, finishing 5th again at Las Vegas and 10th at Atlanta. By then, he still had an 8-point lead over Jeff Gordon. The next race was to be held March 25th at Bristol. This was not only the first race for NASCAR's Car of Tomorrow, but the first scheduled start for Regan Smith in the 01. Once again, Mark Martin was asked countless times whether he'd change his mind and continue to run full-time. On February 28th, Martin said Ginn wouldn't pressure him to do so. "That's not going to happen," he said. "He won't do that. That's why I'm happy here. I'm really in a good place in my life. I feel I've taken stock of my career and my personal life, and I'm really blessed with all the things I've got going." However, on March 3rd, Ginn said he'd put Regan Smith in the number 39 at Bristol if Martin elected to stay in the 01. He said this even after withdrawing the number 39 at both Fontana and Las Vegas. Sure enough, when the series rolled into Thunder Valley, Mark Martin wasn't on the entry list, but on pit road, coaching Regan Smith. Smith qualified 12th and finished 25th. Not among the starters was Joe Nemechek. After finishing 17th or better in 3 of his first 4 races, Nemechek was handed his first DNQ since the very same race in 1998. Sterling Marlin, meanwhile, finished no better than 17th in his first 8 races. His best run came on April 29th at Talladega, where once again he had a fast superspeedway car. Marlin qualified 4th and led 16 laps.
Mike, great note on Sterling Marlin. He's led 1,004 laps in restrictor plate racing, but that is the first lap he's led on a plate race in the last 12 events.
But in the end, he finished 16th. While Waste Management was the listed sponsor for Marlin's Talladega ride, it had been noticeably stripped of its familiar green paint scheme and was left virtually unmarked. While Bobby Ginn had signed Principal Financial Group on March 5th, both as a primary for Martin and as an associate for the other 2 teams, it appeared they were having as much trouble keeping sponsors as they were finding them. Panasonic, which signed for 24 races on Sterling Marlin's car, inexplicably stopped after the 7th race at Texas. This forced Ginn to put his own branding on the car for the May 13th race at Darlington. That same Darlington race saw Nemechek debut a new primary sponsor of his own in Hire America, the U.S. branch of a Chinese appliance company. Reportedly, the deal came about after Brian France and other NASCAR dignitaries made a business trip to China. Certainty, Nemechek's primary sponsor from the opening of the season, wouldn't run as the primary again until Chicagoland on July 15th. Undaunted, Bobby Ginn kept the news positive. On May 12th, the day before Darlington, Jayski reported Ginn was trying to hire Dale Earnhardt Jr., whose impending departure from DEI was now all but certain. "We would stretch as hard as we could stretch to do it," said Ginn. "You want the best, the absolute best. And I love the idea that Dale wants to win championships. He could accomplish that here with us. We're in play." Jr. had also been courted by Joe Gibbs Racing, though the team made clear Budweiser couldn't be his sponsor. Ginn, however, said he'd welcome Budweiser with open arms. But by May 27th, Ginn had not yet spoken to Jr. and only had so-called exploratory conversations with his sister Kelly. Ginn also shored up his current driver lineup. By June 1st, Mark Martin added more races to his part-time schedule: Pocono on August 5th, Richmond on September 8th, and Dover on September 23rd. But he said he wanted to stay part-time in 2008. On June 25th, Sterling Marlin said he also wanted to go part-time that year. Strangely, it was rumored that Marlin would not do so with Ginn, but with Furniture Row Racing, which planned to add a second team. Taking Marlin's place in the number 14 would be Regan Smith, whose schedule in the number 01 increased on June 7th. On that day, news broke that Smith would run at least one Cup, Busch, Truck, or ARCA Series race for each remaining weekend in 2007. Jay Fry said on July 1st that the team planned to expand to 4 cars, and quote, hopefully 2 or 3 years from now, we have 3 or 4 20-something younger guys in the cars. One of these guys was a driver who'd been spurned by his current team.
Just a second ago, under this caution, Denny Hamlin's car brought down pit road by Eric Almirola, giving up 3rd place to make the driver change.
I got to tell you, I think that's a bad decision. They're doing this for the sponsor, I hear. But you know what? This kid, Eric Almirola's been running great. It looks like they're going to go down a lap right now for sure. I don't like this. This whole thing is a real tough deal. He's got to be upset. He's doing a great job out there.
It seems like there was some kind of miscommunication, too, because we heard him talking about earlier they were going to leave Eric Almirola in the car, but somebody must have made the decision higher up, maybe, to take him out of the car.
On June 23rd, Eric Almirola was famously booted from his Busch Series ride at Joe Gibbs Racing after leading the first 43 laps at Milwaukee. Denny Hamlin, now a fixture in the Cup Series, took over and won the race. As early as June 25th came rumors that Almirola was leaving JGR. J.D. Gibbs disagreed, saying Almirola was a huge part of our future since they developed him since his late model days. But that relationship effectively ended on July 16th, when word leaked that Almirola requested a release from JGR to drive for Bobby Ginn. This was confirmed 2 days later. Almirola would share the remaining 2007 schedule for the 01 ride with both Mark Martin and Regan Smith. It's initially reported Almirola would debut at Watkins Glen, but that gets pushed back to Loudon in September as Smith has more road course experience. Almirola will also have to run his final 5 Busch Series races for JGR. But by the time Almirola joined Ginn Racing, it appeared he'd boarded a sinking ship. During practice at New Hampshire on June 30th, both Marlin and Nemechek arrived in cars that were jet black without any sponsors. The team admitted they suddenly had a, quote, available inventory of unsold sponsorship for the second half of the season. This news couldn't have come at a worse time. Not only had Ginn tried to hire Dale Earnhardt Jr., but also Kyle Busch, who that same day was revealed to have been in negotiations with the team. On July 9th, Jay Fry admitted that only the U.S. Army had re-signed with Ginn for 2008, and the 2 sponsorship deals had fallen through. The team shut down their Busch Series program, cutting short a season where Regan Smith had been running 5th in the point standings. 30 employees were let go, including Sterling Marlin's spotter. On July 16th, one day after the race in Chicagoland, the rumor resurfaced that DEI was interested in buying Ginn Racing. Over the off week leading into the All-State 400 at the Brickyard, the team reorganized. Regan Smith replaced Marlin in the number 14, and word was that Joe Nemechek wouldn't even start the number 13 unless sponsorship was found by July 27th, the Friday before the race in Indianapolis. On July 18th, Nemechek saw the writing on the wall. I don't think that Bobby and Jay ever thought it was going to be that hard to find sponsors, he said. It says a lot for the people who are working at Ginn, and we've been able to accomplish a lot. To see it all kind of stop and go away, whatever may happen with the points, it's just disappointing. The next day, Ginn is vague on the status of his team. First of all, I'm not going to speculate on what's going to happen, he said. Things are happening so fast right now that we are preserving every option we have. I don't intend for that car to sit still. It's got value to me or to someone, but we right now, and this is not dodging the question, we have not made a decision as to what we're going to do. As Joe said, both Joe and Sterling are both still under contract. I have sponsors sitting in my office right now, and so we are still working on trying to sponsor it. Throughout its existence, Ginn Racing's fortunes seemed to rise and fall at Indianapolis. In 1998, the track saw Ernie Irvan give them their first pole. In 2000, Aaron's Rents signed on to save their second team from collapse. It was there again in 2006 that Bobby Ginn became the team's new owner. But in a cruel twist, it was there in 2007 the team met its end.
Now, breaking news this week, how about some merger activities? DEI acquires the 01 and 14 Ginn Racing teams, and we're going to explain what all that involves. The owner points transfer to the number 15 of Paul Bernard. Those were the points coming off of the 14 of Sterling Marlin. The future of those 2 car numbers remains unclear, and Mark Martin and the young driver Eric Almirola will split time in the 01, which now goes over to DEI.
Wednesday, July 25th, 2007. The Brickyard is still 4 days away. Ginn Racing will not be around to see it. The day before, David Newton at ESPN reported that DEI had merged with Ginn, and that Mark Martin's 01 would be a DEI car powered by a DEI and Richard Childress engine at Indianapolis. This is confirmed on the 25th. DEI will take over the Ginn shop and rename it DEI West. Ginn's number 13 and number 14 teams are no more. While Furniture Row Racing sought to purchase the number 13's 34th place ranking to lock their 78 car into the race at Indy, NASCAR tells DEI they aren't allowed to sell it to them. Instead, the team is simply scrubbed from the ranks, and the Wood brothers, 36th in points, move into the top 35. The owner points to the number 14, 30th in the standings, move to DEI's number 15 team, giving Paul Menard a guaranteed starting spot and costing Regan Smith his shot to race at Indy. DEI will vigorously deny a rumor that John Menard helped finance the merger to get his son into the top 35. It was never contemplated, nor was the request ever made to John Menard to be a potential player in this transaction, says John Story, DEI's vice president. Teresa Earnhardt has done well for herself over many, many years.
Mark Martin, of course, in the news for that merger with DEI. He's actually now a DEI driver. That means Dale Earnhardt Jr. is now your actual teammate. Have you had a chance to talk to him, Mark?
Yes, I have, and I'm excited. He's excited, even though it's for a short period of time. It's a landmark, I think, in my career, and we're excited about it. Look forward to getting on the racetrack here.
A lot of questions, a lot of talk about these teams now merging, going to 3-4 car teams. What does that mean for this sport, and do you think this is a good thing, what happened this week?
It's a good thing for DEI. It's a good thing for Ginn Racing. It's the trend of the future. You're going to see more and more of it. Mexico Cup continues to get more and more competitive, more and more expensive, and the way you're going to be competitive and survive in this business is consolidate, bring in partners that can bring things to the table. And I feel like that the U.S. Army team and Ryan Pemberton can bring performance things to the table to DEI, and certainly DEI can do the same to the 01 team. So we're going to be stronger going forward. Unfortunately, it is going to take a while for that to be integrated. We're in two different chapters this weekend and can't even hardly talk to one another about the cars. It's amazing how much different you can have cars and have them both run well. And Pocono will be somewhat the same. It's come so fast without warning that we'll pretty much have to go with Pocono with the plan. But as we move forward, we will start to combine and integrate everyone's systems.
The closing of the number 14 team is a huge blow to both Regan Smith and Sterling Marlin. While Smith still runs the Truck Series race at IRP and again sponsored number 47 where he finishes 8th, Marlin can't even get Ginn on the phone. I haven't talked to Bobby Ginn. They haven't returned my calls to my lawyers. They're just kind of leaving me hanging. I'd like to get something worked out and at least finish out the year with somebody if I could. This lack of a response keeps Marlin out of a job. He has offers to drive for other teams, but can't accept any of them until Ginn calls him back to let him out of his contract. Joe Nemechek apparently doesn't have this problem. He gets a last-minute ride from M&M Motorsports, a single-car team who had originally entered their number 08 Dodge for John Andretti. When Andretti had other obligations, they brought on Nemechek, who was still wearing his Ginn Racing uniform as he prepared to qualify.
And what a week. He lost the ride in a shakeup at Ginn Racing. Then when they merged with DEI, found himself on the outside looking in, then got a call to run this car at Indy. And now, Joe, you have to get into this race on your time trial speed. What are you thinking right now?
Wow, what a battle. It's definitely an uphill battle, but hey, this John Carter and this whole group, they give me an opportunity. I mean, I could be at home sitting there watching it on TV, so at least I'm here trying, making an effort. And, this group only runs a few races a year. Good people, but, when you see what all these other big teams are doing, it's hard for a little guy to keep up. But we were pretty good at the beginning of practice. We had a couple issues right in the middle of practice, and we never picked up any more speed. So I just got to hit my marks. Ernie Elliott built a good motor for it. First time for me being in a Dodge, so we're looking forward to it.
Unfortunately, he misses the show. As he does, he entertains the possibility of bringing back his Busch Series team, MB2 Motorsports. In the race, Mark Martin finishes 6th despite gearbox trouble. The merger has another immediate consequence. Kyle Busch believes the merger took up too much of the DEI executive's time, and that he, quote, never felt any warmth from the organization. Although he may still have a chance to take over Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s ride at DEI, he declines, and takes up Jr.'s own missed opportunity at Joe Gibbs Racing.
On August 4th, 2007, Slugger Labbe gives the body count. The merger between DEI and Ginn Racing has cost 124 people their jobs. Of them, only 30 have found work so far. Among them are Jay Fry and Ricky Carmichael, who both joined DEI. By September 10th, Labbe and another crew chief will both sue Ginn in Cabarrus County, North Carolina. Sterling Marlin and Joe Nemechek will also file claims of their own, seeking damages in addition to their $1.2 million owed in base salary. DEI will be named as the defendant, but the team points their fingers back at Ginn. On September 12th, Ginn says he's surprised at the lawsuits. Sterling and Joe's contracts run through the end of the year, and I have paid them through August. All of their winnings and salary per the contract, he said. And I intend to pay through the end of the year. I always have. Apparently, Marlin also gets his phone call from Ginn. He tests with Phoenix Racing after the lawsuit is filed and is slated to race for the team at Talladega. Peter Suspenzo becomes the new crew chief for Robbie Gordon on September 26th. As for Jay Fry, his stay with DEI doesn't last long. By November 11th, he's job hunting again, trying to join Red Bull Racing. 3 more former Ginn employees have a short stay at DEI. On October 13th, during the fall race at Charlotte, a plane flies a banner reading, "How much does Bobby Ginn owe you?" Eerily reminiscent of the bumper stickers made after Ginn's failed Hilton Head deal back in 1980. DEI finds out that the banner was paid for by 3 employees of theirs. DEI isn't amused and all 3 employees are fired soon after. While Ginn reported that back-owed bonuses would be paid by direct deposit in early October, the 4 lawsuits aren't settled until November. On the 6th, Nemechek, Labbe, and Suspenzo's cases are dismissed after settlements. Marlin settles on the 12th and follows through on his plans to scale back to part-time. He will run 10 races in 2008 for Phoenix Racing. Joe Nemechek will go full-time for Furniture Row Racing, the team that was denied his owner points with Ginn. Ryan Pemberton, who served as a crew chief for both Ginn and DEI, leaves the team at season's end to join Michael Waltrip Racing. By the end of 2008, Ginn's empire would crumble after defaulting on a $675 million loan. Foreclosures, bankruptcies, and lawsuits would dog the developer for years to come. Many of his developments are still around, but they're under new ownership, obviously.
Twice in his brief career, Bobby Ginn changed the face of NASCAR team ownership. In 2006, he single-handedly created a new business model for mid-pack teams. Many in the middle of the field would seek outside investors to stay open. Roush Fenway Racing, Gillette Evernham Motorsports, and Rob Kaufman's investment in Michael Waltrip Racing. But just 1 year later, Ginn's collapse set off a much more disturbing trend. They were the first merger, but far from the last. In late 2008, just over a year after their merger with Ginn Racing, Dale Earnhardt Incorporated would merge with Chip Ganassi Racing. From 7 cars, there were now just 3. Among the many let go was Paul Menard, who joined Yates Racing as it merged with Hall of Fame Racing. In place of 3 cars, there were only 2. Bill Davis Racing shut down completely, as did Petty Enterprises. What we now know as Richard Petty Motorsports was merely a 1-car expansion of the Gillette Evernham team. Only 2 new fully funded rides sprung up for Speedweek's 2009, a 4th team for Richard Childress Racing, and the full-time debut of Front Row Motorsports. And who would have thought, 11 years later, Front Row's number 34 is just one of 4 teams in this graphic that's still operating today. When it was all said and done, the number of full-time teams dropped to just 41. The thankless task of filling the field went to a handful of new start-and-park teams, many of them staffed by crew members who lost their jobs. Among these was Joe Nemechek's single-car outfit, Nemco Motorsports. Among the drivers left in the cold by these mergers were Regan Smith and Eric Almirola, who each saw their first full-time rides shot out from under them. Smith took over the 01 after the U.S. Army joined Mark Martin in the vacated number 8 for 2008. Smith won Rookie of the Year, and yes, also this race at Talladega. But like Joe Nemechek and Sterling Marlin before him, Smith would lose his ride and end up at Furniture Row Racing. That same season, Almirola took over Mark Martin's ride in the number 8, but the full-time effort only made it to the spring race at Texas before it too shut down. It wasn't until 2012, when he drove for the reincorporated Richard Petty Motorsports, that he'd ever return to full-time competition. It's plain to see the legacy of Ginn Racing lives on to this very day. So was Ginn Racing one of the sport's biggest frauds? Or was Bobby Ginn himself merely in over his head? Or is there some other explanation? Make sure you mention it in the comments below. A huge thanks to S1apSh0es for collaborating with me on this video. I put together this script and Mark Martin came up in it so much, and with his series on the Liars, Thieves, and Lawyers, check out his channel and the links below here. Had to make sure to bring him on board there. I think this is a great way to kind of tie together both the content on my channel as well as his. Definitely check out more videos on my channel as well as his, and also at NASCAR Man History's channel, where I do narrations on his videos. More of those links are again in the description below. Thank you again so much for watching, everyone, and stay tuned for more content here on YouTube.